Hi everyone, welcome back. And this video is what if Germany formed an empire. So Germany tried to form an empire, which caused the World War One with Austro-Hungary and World War Two with invading Poland. So what if Germany tried again? So this time they would send an ultimatum over to Austria, doing the same thing in World War Two. So Austria would have to accept, or they would have to go to war, and Austria would get destroyed, so might as well just accept it. And then, after that, they decide to look up and then go into Denmark. So, they declare war on Denmark. So, as the German troops start entering the Danish territory, the Danish troops, unprepared, start to fall back tremendously, and then eventually they lose the mainland and then only have a few islands left. So then they start to going island to island, and then eventually they reach Copenhagen, and then eventually they surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here we see full annexation of Denmark, and then they realize since they're there, they could just go after Sweden. So that's what they do. They go ahead and attack Sweden. So then, they probably have a bridge connecting from Denmark to Sweden. So before Sweden was able to destroy it, the Germans are able to do any full-scale invasion, capturing the south part of Sweden, capturing the island, and then going up, and then capturing this other island, and this other one, and then starts to go forward and more north. But it is getting harder to invade since it is starting to get cold. But they are about to threaten the city of Stockholm. But that was when Norway decides to join on the aid of Sweden. So Germany decides to get some allies. So they go ahead and ask Italy to join, which they do. I don't know why that's still there, but Italy sends their troops over to Sweden, and then another stalemate happens. So they go over to Poland and then say that if they help defeat Sweden, they won't attack them in whenever the time comes. So Poland decides to agree. So they go up, and then they start advancing into more territory of Sweden, eventually going into Norway, and then eventually Stockholm falls, and so does Oslo. But at the wrong timing, Finland decides to join on the aid of the Nordic. So with this, the Finnish troops start leaving their territory to go over to Sweden. And since that's happening, the German and the Italians and the Poles start going and start taking over more Norwegian territory. And then they get all of their coast. They surround this part and then take them out. And then eventually Norway surrenders. And then so does Sweden. So Finland wants to ask for peace, but by the time they do, they're already getting invaded. So they're threatening Helsinki, but the Finnish troops are able to push them back. And then over here, they could start to invade from the north, but the Germans aren't used to the cold, so they accepted the Finnish peace treaty. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, so here's the peace treaty between Norway and Sweden. So Norway turns into a puppet, while Sweden gets full annexation, while Finland has to pay compensation over to Germany for them joining the war. I don't know why Austria always wants to break apart from here. And I guess Italy and Poland decided to not become allies with Germany anymore. So, because of that, they declare war on Poland. And turns out that the Russians in Kaliningrad will declare war on Poland too. So Poland will try to fight off the Kaliningrad. So whenever they start to enter it, the Germans start any invasion into Poland. And then eventually their coast is wiped off. But then eventually France and the UK declare war on Germany. So the Spanish sees this and also declare war on Germany, as well as the Portuguese. But they don't send their troops. So, as more German troops start to enter Poland, the Polish troops decide to leave Kaliningrad, making the Russians invade them. And then eventually Poland is off to fighting any two-front war again. And then eventually Warsaw is being threatened once again, then is captured by the Russians. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, so here's the peace treaty with Germany annexing West Poland while Russia annexes East Poland. So with this, they realize that they have the Czech Republic and fully surrounded, while Slovakia still bordering, but not entirely. So they decide to invade both Czechia and Slovakia, declaring war. And then soon, the Germans split them both, capturing Slovakia, capturing Czechia. So let's look at the peace treaty. Here's the peace treaty, and Czechoslovakia was annexed once again. So they go over to the south, and they declare war on Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Hungary, all at the same time. So since Bosnia and Herzegovina has some Serbs, Serbia decides to join. And because of this, Romania looks at this and wants to become allies with the Germans, so they join on the aid of Germany. So Bulgaria sees this and then goes to the blue team. Kosovo, red. Albania, red. Montenegro, red. North Macedonia, red. Greece, blue. And then Turkey decides to stay neutral. So because of this, the Germans have an advantage at trying to connect with Romania. That's what they do. And then soon they go all out. And so does Romania. And then eventually they get all of Bulgaria's coast. And with Greek, Bulgarian, Serbian, and Bosnian troops enter Montenegro, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Albania, they start closing in. But that means Bulgaria was taken out, so was Serbia, and then Hungary. So they managed to pull their troops out of these four, trying to fight off the other team. But then Albania and North Macedonia invade Greece, splitting them off, cutting them off, and then Greece falls. And then soon does Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, then Slovenia. So let's look at the peace treaty. So then, here's the peace treaty in the Balkans. So, half of Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina get annexed by the German territory, while the rest of Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina gets into a puppet state alongside with Hungary, while Romania annexes the Bulgarian coast and a little bit of Serbia, while Kosovo and Montenegro decides to unite, and they're taking the other half of Serbia, making them more bigger and having access to the coast. With Albania and North Macedonia, they annex the entirety of Greece. So, with this, they decide to look up north and send an alliance request over to the Baltics. Fearing the Russians could invade them since they are surrounded, they decide to accept them. So, they decide to look in the west with the Iberian Peninsula. France and the UK has declared war on them. So, they decide to go a little bit, sending a little bit of their troops over to France, trying to fight them off. And then the French being unprepared, the Germans go in a little. Soon they were stalemated. But this has been paused. We're stalemated for a long time. So they decide to go through the Benelux region again. So with the Germans storming through the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, soon Paris falls, making the French surrender. And then soon, the French retreats over to this island, and then the Germans start to have a hard time crossing the mountains, but they start to invade Andorra, which they quickly take, and then eventually they start entering through Spain. And then Spain tries to hold them off as much as they can, making a stalemate. And with the Portuguese troops going over to Spain to fight off the Germans, the UK starts to bomb German cities. But with the help of Romania, Kosovo, and Albania, they start to send their troops over to here, start making the push more accessible. A spearhead goes through the Spanish coast, almost to Portugal, and then a spearhead goes over to Madrid, and then another one through the coast. Another one captures these islands, while surrounds Spain entirety, capturing Gibraltar, and then going through Portugal. Soon, Madrid falls, and so does Lisbon. So then eventually, the Spanish and the Portuguese surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty for these three countries. So here's the peace treaty with France and the Iberian Peninsula. So Spain and Portugal unite into one puppet state, while the northern part of France, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg get annexed by Germany, while the southern part of France still becomes a puppet, while this part still declares war on Germany as the French government. So over here, Romania decides to annex Moldova, and then soon Russia decides to okay, I guess Ukraine joined. But with the help of these two, they decide to invade the Baltics, making Germany want to join. So that's what they did. So with Estonia falling, and then Latvia, then Lithuania, Germany starts to storm right in, with the German allies also crossing in, invading the western part of Ukraine. And but then eventually they're halted to a stalemate, which makes time for the Russians to recruit new allies. So the new ally is Italy, Morocco, the US, and Canada. If I could get it in. So already the Germans already know that they're gonna lose with the US and Canada and oh my gosh, Canada joining. So the Germans decide to look for allies themselves, and then that's when they go over to South America, and they get Brazil, Bolivia, South Africa, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Who else? I mean, they could also get North Korea, making the South Koreans join. So China decides to help the Germans, making Taiwan join. And now I think that is it. So pretty much it's now equal, with the South American troops and the African troops decide to go up to the European border first before going into Russia. So the Germans decided to go for Italy first, since they could storm right in at any time. With the Germans already entering Italy, they could invade Switzerland for more access, and that's what they do. They also invade Switzerland. With the Switzerland falling, it makes the Germans enter Italy more faster, making the Swiss neutrality terminated, which means a lot of countries will get mad at Germany for destroying the neutral country, making Mongolia, Algeria, Nigeria, Ethiopia, India, Madagascar, and Australia join, all on the side of Russia. So, as fast as they can, they try to storm into Italy. And then with it, the French from this island start to going on the side of Italy, they also get invaded. And so does Sardinia. So with the Spanish and Portuguese troops going over to Morocco, and some French going into Libya, to Algeria, they managed to get the coast, and then they start to storming into Morocco. And then soon, all of the Moroccan coast has been captured, and then they both surrender. So, Italy decides to switch teams. Now they're on the German team. Oh, wrong color. So they switch teams to the Germans. And then the stalemate has finally been broken. Oh. So with this, the Germans start on a spearhead going to the Baltics, which goes well. And then soon they're stalemated a little bit in the Lithuanian border. But soon they are able to go inside of it, soon liberating it, going north, and then starting to go to Latvia. With a pro-German government, but the Baltics decide that they don't want a new government, they just want to become independent, which makes Estonia and the rest of Latvia be against the Germans. So with this, they storm into the rest of Latvia, and then going over to Lithuania. And then soon, they're stalemated again. And then in the southern border, a spearhead goes over to Kiev, which it goes very well, and then eventually capturing it, which makes Ukraine surrender. Oh, not Russia yet. But eventually, Ukraine surrenders, leaving a lot of, there we go. Ukraine fully surrenders. And then they start a full-out invasion into Russia. Soon they are threatening the gates of Moscow once again. But that means that they're able to break the stalemate and then capture Lithuania, making Lithuania join the Russian. So with this, another stalemate has been caused. And then with the Canadian and US troops finally arriving in the Iberian Peninsula, they start a liberation campaign in Gibraltar, starting to go up. Another one happens in Lisbon. Eventually they connect, and then start going forward. And then some of those start to go into Morocco and Algeria. And then eventually, Morocco has been liberated, and so has Algeria. So with that happening, another liberation campaign happens in northern France. So then and a whole entire front line has been formed. So here's the battle going so far. And then eventually, the Finnish troops declare war on Germany. And then soon, Egypt leaves the war. Iran, Saudi Arabia, and then which makes Ethiopia and Nigeria and Algeria leave the war. So over here, the Germans decide to annex the rest of France and Spain and Andorra. So because of this, they're now back into a stalemate, trying to push them off. And then eventually, they are able to push off the British off of their territory. And then they decide to annex Corsica. And they also push out the Canadian and American in the Iberian Peninsula, leaving them with just Gibraltar. So here's what's going on so far. It looks very similar, but over here in the Nordics, and a liberation campaign happens in Norway. And also Sweden. And since the Finnish troops are able to stand against the cold, they are able to push off the Germans a lot. And then soon, as the temperature starts to rise a little bit more south, they're back into a stalemate. Then next, Norway gets annexed by the Germans. And then soon, they decide to go over to the Baltics, and then they invade again. I guess they invaded Finland again, but they were pushed out, if I could get it. And then soon, this front extends to St. Petersburg, capturing it. Then this entire lake, going over to the Finnish border. And then soon, this part gets cut off from the Russian mainland, eventually falling over to the Germans. And then soon, the Battle of Moscow starts to begin. And then eventually, Moscow has been captured. But the Russians don't surrender just yet. So over here in Asia, the North Koreans starting to push down to the south. Then eventually, they're back into a stalemate with the Australian and Indian troops coming in. They liberate South Korea. And then over here in Taiwan, China captures it. But they're also able to start a campaign in North Korea, and with the help of the people, North Korea soon falls. So, with the Australian and Indian troops going to Taiwan, they fully liberated and slowly invading China. So, with the front carefully going to India, connecting them, and then soon, a big front happens, and then eventually Shanghai was captured. And then some Russians and Mongolians invaded China in the north. And then soon they connect with the rest of India. And then soon they connect with the South Koreans, Manchuria Falls, Xinjiang Falls, Tibet Falls. And then eventually Beijing was captured and China surrenders. So over here, Madagascar and Morocco, India and some Australians decide to go over to South Africa. And before they even arrive, South Africa leaves the war. So they go over to South America, making a landing in southern Brazil and northern Brazil. And in this part of Brazil, and then they all connect, cutting Brazil off from the water. And then eventually Brazil surrenders, and with the Bolivia alone, they also surrender. So now it's just Germany, Italy, Romania, Kosovo, and Albania left. So some more advancements happen in Russia. With Moscow long gone, they still don't surrender. So with the aid of the Indians, Taiwanese, South Koreans, Madagascan, probably, Australian, aid to go over to the Russians, they are able to push back the Germans by a lot, getting this territory back. And with it, the Finnish also helping. And they liberate the Baltics. Oh my gosh, that's a big mess. So, with it, the Germans losing stability in the Nordics, Sweden and Norway officially get liberated. And with the Allies going up to Italy, capturing these two, and then they slowly go up into southern Italy, alongside with a little bit of Greece. In southern and Albania, capturing Athens, liberating it, and then soon Italy decides to switch sides, now fighting against the Germans, which makes the Germans angry and then start a campaign into Italy. So with this, Italy starts to be in... So with it, the Italians are fighting against the Germans now, and another stalemate happens, which makes Romania leave the war. And then with Albania almost being captured, they asked for peace, but it was too late. So Albania, if I could get in the right color, Albania falls. And just like that, Kosovo also falls. So the liberation campaign happens in this part of Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia happens. Also the liberation of Hungary. So another landing has been made in the Iberian Peninsula, this time with a big liberation, liberating Lisbon and Madrid, eventually going to Andorra and the French island. Soon, another landing has been made by the British, and then they connect with Spanish and Portuguese. And then soon they were able to climb back up all the way to Switzerland, officially liberating it. And then soon, the fear of them being encircled by the Swiss and the Italians, they decided to leave Italy. But they are still encircled by here, and then this part falls. So, with the German troops coming back from the Russian territory, this part falls. Oh my gosh, that's a big mess. Okay, but any liberation happens in Paris, and then in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And then soon, Germany is being encircled, and then with the Norwegian and Swedish troops coming in, they surround Germany in the coastal areas, and then soon Berlin falls. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, so here's the peace treaty of the German territory. So Luxembourg annexes the rest of Belgium because the Belgian government was unable to sustain itself, and also getting Luxembourg also had occupation zone, but they decided to just give it to them. So, and then this is the Italian occupation zone. Over here is the Russian occupation zone. Also, they were unable to keep Belarus and the Baltics and Ukraine. So, they give Poland, Kaliningrad, and a little bit of Belarus as compensation. And here's the Polish occupation zone, the Danish occupation zone, the Dutch, and over here in the orange is the British and the American occupation zone. So, and then over here in the Balkans, Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina decide to unite for economic help, as well as Montenegro, Kosovo, and Albania also united. And then Romania had to give back Bulgaria, but they were able to keep Moldova. And then over here in Central Europe, we see the return of Czechoslovakia, and the new treaty when this war ended was that Germany can no longer annex Austria into future wars, and if it does, then every country will be going to attack Germany to make them take Austria out. So, and also in the Nordics, nothing happened much. And then in South America, we see a lot happening. Even though the rest of the countries over here did nothing, the Europeans decided to give the land to the bordering countries. So, Uruguay got some land from Brazil. Paraguay is no longer landlocked, and it got some land in Bolivia and Brazil. Argentina lost land a little bit to Paraguay, but in compensation, they got some land out of Bolivia. Chile is no longer straight, it's now curved, but now over here in Peru, they got some more land from Brazil and a little bit of Bolivia. Over here in the north, French Guyana annexed Guyana and Suriname. I don't know what, I think it was French Guyana, I don't know. But anyways, they annexed three, and they annexed the other two territories here. Then Venezuela got some land out of Brazil, and then Colombia also got some land out of Brazil, making this new Brazil a pro-Western, more like, it was pro-German, like it was pro-Western, but the new government changed it to pro-German. Now it's back to pro-Western, and sadly Ecuador got nothing out of it. So nothing much has changed in Africa. And then over here in Asia, Taiwan annexes China. Mongolia now got Inner Mongolia. Tibet was released from China, and the Koreans, I mean, and in the Korean Peninsula, the South Korean annexed the North, liberating the people in North Korea. And now, I think that's all. So, hopefully y'all liked the video, and I'll see you on the next one.